Hey everyone, welcome back to the 12th Man Show. And for today's episode, we've managed to get a big name onto the show for an interview. Something we're super proud of and something we're extremely pumped to share with you guys. So, the individual for today's episode is the live anchor, MC, and commentator for Star Sports for Indian football, Indian Super League, IPL, ICC Cricket World Cup, the whole spiel. He has over 15,000 hours of live TV experience on camera or at a live venue. His career has seen him commentate at some big Premier League games and some big ISL matches. He is a true believer of Indian football and he truly believes that this sport is going to grow super fast in India. Please welcome to the show for the first time, Anant Tyagi.
The only thing that I would possibly want to point out is that one, that I really love the ISL, and two, my focus is always on sort of the positive developments around Indian football and the ISL.
Great.
So anything which is sort of remotely pulling any of the leagues in India down would something I would not be comfortable talking about. Other than that, it's the world's your oyster. Go for it.
so definitely, that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about, and now that since you've addressed it, might as well start with it. So I wanted to know what your impressions are about Indian football over the sort of past 6 years since ISL started. How do you see how do you think it has grown?
Actually, it's a great question because a lot of people look at the ISL as sort of the revolution that came about, and rightly so in so many ways. If you talk to the football players in India, they'd also tell you how professionalism took a completely different meaning once the ISL came about. Obviously, in the initial couple of years, it was about seeing Del Piero in action, getting himself. I was at the stadium when Del Piero got himself on, I think around the 37th or the 38th minute in the Delhi game.
Wow.
And so, I mean, the initial attraction was seeing the Del Pieros, the Robert Pires, the Ljungbergs, the Trezeguets of the world, Marco in Chennai, Elano, and all of these guys. Berbatov later on as well, yeah, absolutely. Tim Cahill, now a very good colleague who we continue to stay in touch with. But I think if you really look at the start of the decade, which is sort of 2011, when we made it to the Asian Cup for the first time in 27 years, if I'm right, 1984, when last time we made it. That for me was sort of the change
Turning
of guard
point.
in many ways, Kush, because I think I think people underestimate the contribution sometimes that the likes of I M Vijayan and Joe Paul Ancheri and Mahesh Gaoli as a great centre back. Somebody we're still struggling to replace actually in so many ways. Renedy Singh and Baichung Bhutia. And that was sort of the passing of the baton in so many ways to the Sunil Chhetris of the world.
That strong transition period.
Yeah, and so that 2011 Asian Cup, even though we, to be fair, we did get battered, but when you play at that stage is when you learn. I mean, you can read books and theories and you can watch as many analysis programs with Anant Tyagi and Paul Macefield and whoever else. But at the end of the day, there's nothing like being on the ground and experiencing.
Competing at that level. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think the growth, you could clearly see the growth in that Qatar game for the World Cup qualifier where we held on for a 0-0 draw.
Yeah, growth and the maturity, because you know that you might not be able to force a result against a side like this, and you're missing Sunil Chhetri in that game in any case. And let's not forget there was a context to that Qatar game. I'm sorry, I'm going to be jumping topics like that because you keep refreshing my memory. But Indian players actually landed in different batches. They landed at different times. They barely had time to prepare, let alone the physical preparedness for a game like that. And lost Chhetri before the contest. So these guys were, I won't say jet lagged, but they've been through a very arduous sort of a journey to get to Doha in the first place. And then, although the players themselves confessed that because of the cooling in the stadium, which is something that you'll see in the World Cup of 2022 as well, is great. But at the same time, you have never been at that stage. Those guys have, they're Asian champions. They've scored against every opposition that has come in front of them, and to be able to not just hold on to a draw, but to not concede against them. we were a bit lucky as well, but is something else. And you're absolutely right. But that confidence comes from years and years of being at that level, playing at that level as well. And I always go back to that Asian Cup for that very reason, because
2011, yeah,
the
the turning
2011, and
point.
then of course the ISL comes about, and it's like a massive affair. Suddenly, the dressing rooms are spick and span. The pitches are great. The coaches are of a completely different standard. Yes, even though the international players are sort of at the dusk of their careers, but
Yeah.
the experiences that they're bringing into that dressing room. Imagine a Del Piero talking to somebody like an Adil Khan who's in the same Delhi team, and now Adil Khan is playing for the national team.
Yeah.
Imagine a Trezeguet talking to Pritam Kotal, or it's an experience that you can't
Just
purchase.
the mentorship that you get in terms of how you should train, how you should live, what you should focus on a daily basis. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I know there's a lot of criticism of how a lot of international players landed up in the dusk of their careers, but at the end of the day, you've got to share a dressing room. You ask Anirudh Thapa about his initial experiences of sharing a dressing room of Chennai FC, and he was left awestruck by a lot of these guys. So you get to learn so much, provided you're willing to learn. And I think that's the other transition we've seen in Indian football: the willingness to learn, not just taking a paycheck and going back home and saying, right, now I get my plot of land and I set up my shop and I'm good to go for the rest of my life.
Definitely.
No, look at Sunil Chhetri. He's gone vegan. He's even in the off season, he doesn't stop working. How can I try to be like this? I think that awareness was there, but that mentality to replicate the success that some of your stars are having was possibly not there. But I think it's a good mix that we're seeing now, with the money coming in for players as well, along with the awareness and the willingness to change and reform as footballers.
I think you rightly said that Chhetri is extremely sort of disciplined and follows his routine like crazy. So I mean, one example would be when I was in the photo shoot with him when we were recording for the promo campaigns and everything. He used to get his coconut water at the designated time and those sort of things. So I think with the money coming in and with the sort of discipline that Chhetri brings in, I think the new players coming up would sort of be more humble and focused towards the game rather than the social side of it.
But and the money coming in is important, Kush, because even though there is a flip side to it, that do Indian players want to go abroad and sit on a bench in, say, a second tier of Portuguese football if they are given the opportunity, or are they just happy being in India? And that is a great debate, but maybe for another day, whether they'd want to do that. A Chhetri went out, a Baichung went out, a Gurpreet went out, a Supratapal went out. So there is this ongoing debate. But at the end of the day, if there is no money that's available in Indian football, why would my father or my mother, as a footballer growing up at 15, 16, say, I think you should pursue football? It's giving them a livelihood. It's giving them an option of a profession. At the end of the day, these guys it's a job, right? So if my dad says, right, what are your plans after class 12? And I'm going to turn around and say, Dad, I want to play football. What are you going to make out of football? Where's the money in football? I mean, if you're a cricketer, there's IPL. So even if you don't make it in Indian cricket, you still have the option of
IPL,
Yeah, you can still crack a deal, make a few crores in a couple of years, and you're out of it. But in the ISL is now beginning to give them that platform where they can use it as
Indian football is moving in that direction where it's seen as a viable career option.
So I think it's important in that sense, but it leads to a bigger debate about whether they're more comfortable here, but maybe that's for another day.
Definitely. So where do you see Indian football going in the next let's say this decade, in fact, by the end of this decade? Because we've had the Under-17 World Cup. Our team is doing relatively better than it used to do in the World Cup qualifiers. Where do you see us going with ISL and all these things?
I think the World Cup is our biggest problem. A lot of people are misled by this whole World Cup dream. It's fair to have it, but I think that everybody needs a bit of a reality check. And it's quite obvious. We progressed in the FIFA rankings. If they are sort of the barometer of success, sometimes they can be skewed as well, because sometimes some countries might not have played enough friendlies or enough FIFA approved matches for them to move up the rankings. But truth be told, India find themselves in the top 20, but they don't find themselves in the top 15 of Asia consistently.
Yeah.
If you really want to make the World Cup, you want to be in the top 5 in Asia, right? And that's the reality of it, and that's the reality check that a lot of us need from time to time. That if we are not good enough to, compete against a Qatar, a Japan, a South Korea, and Iran, or a Saudi Arabia, or a UAE for that matter, frankly, we're not good enough to be playing at the world stage. Our best bet is of hosting the World Cup,
World Cup.
and that's how we can make it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just being brutally honest here, because I think what people tend to forget is that the first step is to consistently qualify for the Asian Cup, and then to consistently make the knockout stages of the Asian Cup, and that is the way to progress, because we made it to the 2019 edition. We're yet to finalize our place in the 2023 edition, which will, I'm guessing, still be in China. And the whole talk of the World Cup qualifiers is sort of, I feel it's a bit deceiving. I know we've had disappointing results along the way, where we were doing so well till about the 82nd minute against Oman, and then we fell short. We had a poor game against Bangladesh. We were lucky to get a result out of it.
Yeah.
Adil Khan's equalizer. Same story with Afghanistan. And Chetri will tell you himself, he was very disappointed with those two results because Indian football was poor in those two games. So if we're not consistent enough, how can we be even looking at the World Cup at this stage? My ambition, if I'm an Indian footballer right now, would be to definitely make the knockout stage of Asian Cup 2023. But even before that comes the qualifying stage, which is we have to make it to that.
Do extremely well in the qualifying stage to have a good sort of campaign in the Asian Cup that follows.
I mean, ask yourself, when was the last time we qualified in back-to-back Asian Cups? You'll have to, ask your father possibly, or somebody very senior in your family to know that. 1984, then to 2011, that's 27 years when we made it to the Asian Cup again. Then again, we don't make it in 2015, and then we make it in 2019. So even in this decade, or rather the last decade now, we've struggled. We've struggled with that consistency. Yes, I guess in between 2016 and 18, we played 28 matches, won 18 games. We went on a good run, but that's not good enough to get us the result that we needed against Bahrain to make it to the next round. So
definitely,
that's what's important. That's what's important. But I think we're halfway there to doing better in Asian Cups, because you got a great squad of players now, and with Chetri sort of passing that torch on to the next generation, I think this is the perfect time for them to start punching at least at their weight, if not above their weight, in Asian Cups. And then we can have
definitely.
A chat after.
I agree. In fact, what my sort of assumption is that FIFA is sort of increasing the number of teams in the World Cup, and with the Asian bracket benefiting from that, just maybe India can possibly make it for the.
Again, if we are in the top 10, we can flirt with the idea.
Yeah.
If we are not even the top 10 in Asia, that's harboring an ambition that's too far. And currently, with the way the World Cup qualifiers are going, I mean, adversity has come knocking at the door, and when adversity comes knocking at your door, you curtail your ambition. So you just sort of get the result against Bangladesh in the next game, whenever that happens. You make sure that you do damage control now at this stage, just to make it to the Asian Cup. Yeah.
True, definitely. So you're a presenter. You've been, I think you're extremely well versed in Indian football. So how did this journey begin? How did you end up becoming a presenter?
I mean, sometimes it seems like the greatest coincidence. Sometimes it feels like an accident, or you can call it the grandest design of God. I was actually in a corporate job back in England, and I was resigned to possibly doing that for the rest of my life. Not that it's a bad thing. I mean, I have a lot of respect for people who sit at desks with a laptop open in front of them.
Yeah.
I have done my share of Excel modeling and SAP systems handling and all of that. But I had a master's in media and communications from Jamia Millia in Delhi. So the ambition was always to get into the media side of things. Unfortunately, I didn't think that I was either good enough or I was going to be paid enough with the kind of degrees that I had. I said, okay, maybe this is not quite going to work out the way I thought it would, with this media degree. A lot of people who were in my batch in the Mass Communication Research Center where I was doing my master's wanted to get into filmmaking. That's not something I wanted to do. I wanted to, face the camera or to be able to hold a mic and do commentary or just be a sports journalist at the minimum. And that I didn't see too many options that time in India. So I thought, okay, maybe I should go and do a master's in sports journalism outside and try and see if there's some work outside. Unfortunately, I landed up in a city where there was a very sort of conservative and xenophobic climate, and I realized very quickly that my skin color and my accent are going to come in my way. And to be fair, the dean of the place where I went to even told me in no uncertain terms that maybe you should try your luck behind the camera because you'd possibly be better off doing that. I already had a master's in media and communications. I'd done my share of video editing, the Final Cut Pros, the Avids, and handling Arri Flex cameras and all of that. And I felt I did take it to heart a little bit, thinking, why do I need to be here when I already have that qualification? I need to be facing the camera now because that's why I've landed up, where I have. So unfortunately, the dean and the university didn't see it that way, and I had to cut my losses because I'd taken a huge student loan to go there, convince my dad that I'm 23, but I still need to do another master's. And eventually, as it turned out, that master's never really happened. I moved out, and I decided to get into a corporate job with another diploma under my belt in an economics field. So I got there, started the job with British Gas in England. Okay. And a couple of years down the line, I was flirting with the idea again of whether I should continue in this or should look for a bit of an upgrade. And then one day I was shifting apartments. I was at this place called the Indian YMCA in London, and I happened to meet these guys from ESPN Star who were having lunch over there, and they put up a big notice saying they're looking for Premier League commentators based out of England who speak good Hindi. Luckily for me, I've grown up in a family of Hindi writers. I could speak reasonably good Hindi, and I went and chatted with them. I gave my auditions. 6 weeks later, I was at Stamford Bridge commentating on Chelsea versus Man City.
And that's when you started supporting Chelsea, I'm assuming?
No, I've been supporting Chelsea, or should I say, I've been empathizing with Chelsea for a very long time. I think they were the underdogs in the early 2000s when the Ranieri era was still on. That's a different story. But I mean, there were a lot of people who are United supporters, and I've said this before as well. There were people who were wearing red all the time in front of me. There was either Man United or there was Henry 14 jerseys of Arsenal, which is basically red. And then there were NBA jerseys with Chicago Bulls, which were basically red. So you know how kids are growing up, 13, 14. I like blue, man. That's sometimes as simple as that. We went to the hills, during a midterm break in my boarding school, and I saw this guy wearing a Gianfranco Zola jersey, 25, blue in color. That looks good. Zola's it rang a bell because of somebody who played with Maradona back in the day. So, yeah, I think this jersey is one I want to get. Turns out he was playing for Chelsea then. I started following Chelsea's progress, and I realized they're the team that could surprise in the early 2000s. They were like the Southamptons of the world that time. So, okay, good players. May not always win, but they'll always put up a fight. And that's how Chelsea's story began back in. Wow. And then, as luck would have it, eventually I find myself commentating on my first game, which happened to be Chelsea. So I'm extremely grateful to ESPN Star that they gave me the opportunity to do that. And I'm extremely grateful to them that they gave me the opportunity to come to India because the ISL was starting in 2014. After doing a year of Premier League, traveling across 20 stadiums, they asked me if I'd want to join the team in Mumbai for the ISL, which was starting in October 2014. And then I said, okay, let me test the idea. Let me think about it. Let's see if it works out. And how bad can it be? It turned out to be pretty good. I moved from Stamford Bridge to Salt Lake Stadium, thanks to a man called Gaurav Gala, who had given me the phone call and said, I work for ESPN Star and I'd like you to be a part of the ISL coverage for this year. So, eternally grateful to...
You've been doing ISL ever since. Yes. Plan on going back?
Oh, no, certainly. No, I love it here. Absolutely love it here. I have gone back a few times, met my old friends back there. It's always nice. And there's a great culture of football in England. So, if you're a football fan, you can't not want to be in England. But what we've seen over the last 6 years with the ISL and Indian football in general, I think, there's no better place to be at this moment in time.
I'm sure. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you completed your master's, you studied media and communications, and then ESPN happens. So, do you think it's become easier to become a presenter, sports journalist, doing exactly what you're doing now than it was before in India?
Um, that's a good question. I don't know what it's like from the outside in. I got very lucky in the sense that I happened to be eating lunch at the same place where these guys came looking.
Yeah.
A lot of people have to go through the grind. And to be fair, I applied to many different places as a sports journalist, as a rookie journalist who would just write stuff about sport back in the day, and I didn't get a look in that easily. And if it weren't for that, like I said, that
Opportunity.
coincidence
Yeah.
of having lunch at the same place, I don't know if I would have been doing this job at this point in time. So I don't know what the opportunities look like from the outside in, but what I can say is that eventually, if you're good enough, the opportunity might not come when you expect it, but when you least expect it, suddenly the door might open. But if you're ready enough, you'll grab it with both hands. A lot of people say they're very passionate about sport, and fair play to them, because
Yeah.
there's a strong culture, but there's also, I feel, this tendency of using passion as a very fashionable term these days. It's basically just a hobby, right? At the end of the day, all of us, who doesn't like watching sport? Who doesn't like that famous saying that I always turn to the sports section of the newspaper first because it
Yeah.
talks of human accomplishments and the front page has nothing but human failures and all of that.
Yeah.
So it is fashionable, I feel, but I also feel like uh, it's important that you understand that sometimes passion will only take you as
So
far,
far. Yeah.
but you have to be constantly prepared. I mean, when a lot of people get in touch saying, how can I do commentary and all of that, and I tell them, go get on YouTube, open a game, start talking about the game, and also that whole cycle of reading, writing, speaking, and then presenting in front of a camera is a cycle that I was always told to follow by my father, by my grandfathers who've been in media, or even by seniors who I'd met along the way. And it's a cycle that I feel a lot of people tend to break sometimes. I feel like they want to go straight to presenting in front of camera without realizing that maybe there is a stage one, which is
Yeah.
just being able to pen down your thoughts and then to be able to articulate them without facing a camera, and then to be able to do exactly that by staring into that black box that can be very intimidating if you're at a packed Wankhede or a Salt Lake Stadium. So
Definitely.
if you follow those steps and if you're ready for it, that opportunity might just come knocking on the door any time, and possibly when you least expect it, possibly when your hands are dipped in dal in the middle of a lunch in London. It can happen, right? So you just have to be prepared.
Definitely. I mean, for me, I think one of the so I don't usually follow commentators, but one of the commentators that really sort of caught my attention was Peter Drury, and I started listening more attentively to his commentaries after that Aguero moment in the Premier League.
That was
When
Martin Tyler, actually, Kush. Martin Tyler came
Oh,
up with
was
the
it?
Aguero. Yeah, Aguero was Martin Tyler, and
Okay.
Peter Drury was on the Premier League feed. That anyway. So yeah,
Oh no, I think he was in the Sunderland game. My bad. But I think I
yeah.
saw an interview between him and Peter Drury, and he was doing a podcast for some other person, and he talked about that Aguero moment, and then how the way he prepares for his games is he sort of tells himself that some people will be in the stadium for the first time watching this game, watching a game for the first time in their lives, so it's
Right.
his job to sort of make it memorable for them. And I've
Yeah.
been, yeah, I mean, it's brilliant.
He's
So it
a
is,
football poet, as we call him.
yeah.
Peter Drury is absolutely exceptional. But I have had the privilege of meeting both of them, Peter Drury and
Wow.
Martin Tyler.
Wow.
Because again of ESPN Star giving us the commentary position right next to, say, the Sky Sports commentators. So Martin Tyler, Gary Neville, or just above them would be the Premier League TV commentators like Peter Drury, like Jim Beglin,
Yeah.
John Champion, and all of these guys back in the day. The work ethic, push, is mind-boggling. I mean, I make notes, and obviously we're the younger generation, if I can call myself young still, who use iPads and fancy stuff. those guys are old school, but man, that old school thing works so well. I
Definitely.
genuinely, I'm a firm believer in writing things down because I feel it's almost like that writing holds you accountable
Yeah.
for what you have to do and what you
Yeah.
must say. And I've seen and I've been lucky enough that Martin gave us a lot of time sometimes before matches, and he would sit us down and he would say, "These are my notes, and this is how I do it." And honestly, if you were to ask him the last time a hat trick was scored on a Thursday when skies were overcast at the Emirates or at Highbury, he will tell you, and he's that thorough with his preparation. And obviously that comes with years and years of doing football and all of
Yeah,
that, and
definitely.
all of that. But I'm a huge Martin Tyler fan for that very reason because he always spared time for us.
Wow.
And told us how, basically showed us the ropes, right? This is how it's done. With technology, things have changed a little bit. Now you have real-time
Yeah.
stats coming in and all of that, graphics being fired,
Yeah.
a lot of that. So you have to adapt with the times, as I'm sure they must have as well. I haven't met him in 6, 7 years,
Yeah.
but what Peter Drury does with a microphone and to be able to, like you said, create that moment even for a first-time viewer, for a first-time tune-in. And let's not forget, not just a first-time tune-in. Sometimes you have a guy tuning in or a girl tuning in at the 37th minute of a
Yeah.
game. Have absolutely no idea who's playing, but they just suddenly
Yeah.
see, oh, okay, that's David Beckham playing over there, and they just know David Beckham and nobody else. And then it's Peter or Martin's or John Helm's responsibility to just guide them and tell them what it is.
What's going
So
on in the game? Yeah.
yeah, it's an
Definitely.
art. It's an art. If we can achieve 1% of what they have in their careers, I think I would get a pat on the back from my father.
I'm
100%.
sure you will. I'm sure you will. With the passion you have for Indian
No,
football, I definitely see it happening.
they're
So,
phenomenal. They're phenomenal, and I'm grateful that I got to meet them. So yeah.
sort of coming back to Indian football, the
Yeah.
new season's about to start for the first time, not without the fans. So, what are you expecting this season from the ISL?
It's terrible, and you've got to feel for fans of Kolkata. You've got to feel for fans of Kerala in particular because they have been used to flocking to stadiums for every
Yeah.
time. Now with ATK Mohan Bagan coming together as two entities and not have Mohan Bagan supporters being there, there are also rumors of East Bengal coming into
ISL. Yeah.
at the time of this conversation. It's not finalized, but it's something that people are talking about. Imagine having two Kolkata Giants in the ISL, more than 100 years of legacy and the fan base that they have. And the rivalry that they have, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's
Definitely.
always this bite in the game when you have two rivals. Uh, it's going to be so sad. It's going to be terrible. But I think everyone's accepted the times that we're in, yeah. And all we have to do is now just make sure that everyone's safe. It's I think fans also have to realize that the decision has been taken in their interest.
Yeah.
And ask Chennai fans who traveled to Goa, or the ATK fans who traveled for the final. Some of them could not make it to the stadium because the protocol was set just before the final, and you feel bad for
Oh,
them. They were in the city for the previous
for the
ISL
game.
final,
Yeah.
but they couldn't make it for the game, and they had to go back. So some of them have had a taste of it. But I'll feel in particular for the fans of Kolkata because this would be their their arrival in the ISL, and not being there would obviously be very disappointing from their point of view.
Definitely, but I think with the new teams coming in, with East Bengal coming in and Mohan Bagan ATK coming into the ISL, I think even if the fans don't get to sort of be with them this season in the stadiums, I doubt that will sort of bring down the intensity of the rivalry.
Oh no,
I'm sure.
definitely not. I don't think so. I think the players know that as well, and we've already seen in the Bundesliga and in the Premier League that it's not affected the yeah the home advantage sort of goes away a little bit. That's why I said
Definitely.
I'll feel for the fans of Kerala and for Kolkata, because if there was one chance to really get behind their team, there would be this one.
Yeah.
But I think the intensity is not going to drop. I think players know they're playing for contracts. They know that people are watching on TV. In fact, more people possibly watching on TV
Will be
now
watching
than
on
ever.
TV. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a good chance to really be spotted by scouts,
For
as they
sure.
say. Yeah.
Any sort of players you're looking forward to seeing? Sort of breakthrough seasons?
I have this this huge desire to see a midfielder from India really, command all the numbers.
Yeah.
When you talk about when you usually talk about Indians making a name for themselves, you talk about Gurpreet, you talk about Amrinder, usually the goalkeepers, a Sandesh Jingan in defense, a Rahul Bheke who scored an ISL winner, a Jess El Carnero who came up with 5 assists, Prabir Das who had a breakout season, defenders, all of them. We
Yeah.
we really talk highly of the likes of Roland Borges, of Sahal Abdul Samad, of Anirudh Thapa, all these guys. But when are we going to see those kind of numbers that we see with an Ahmed Jahood? Yeah, of course, different experience. They played in different leagues across the world, and now they're coming here. But I want to see that one Indian midfielder really dominate. I mean, really pull strings in the middle of the park like nobody's business. So I hope that when people talk about Bengaluru, people talk about Suresh Wangjam in the middle of the park. I hope when people talk about Kerala, people talk about Sahal, and he's inspired Kerala to a final. If that were to be the case, Thapa for Chennai, maybe even from ATK's point of view, ATK Mohan Bagan now coming together, you want to see an Indian midfielder make names, because the usual format that I've noticed is the goalkeeper is Indian, because now you have 5 foreigners in an 11. Your fullbacks are usually Indian. Your wingers are usually Indian. Your striker is inadvertently an international, unless you're and your midfielders are a mix of Indian and foreigners. But the onus is always on that one foreign midfielder who's calling the shots. So I'd want that to change. If you were to
I think this would be, even I'm sort of, I'm actually expecting a breakthrough season for Sahal and Anirudh Thapa. Just, I don't know, gut feeling. I think they're going to do so well this ISL, because Sahal has...
3 years ago, sorry Kush, 3 years ago, we were having a chat in the Star Sports studios, and Anirudh Thapa had just, I think, scored against Goa. There was a final game of the season. Both teams had a very disappointing season, Chennai and Goa. The game was in Goa. It turned out to be a 5-4. Sahil Devora scored the win of Goa. Anirudh Thapa scored a goal which was given as an own goal. And he had a great game. I think it was his first ever game for Chennai. Jerry Lal Rinswala scored in that game as well, another youngster who's already picked up the Emerging Player Award. And I just looked at him and I thought, future India captain, this guy. There's something about him. And it just stuck with me, and I still hold on to it. I think he will be a future India captain. Anirudh Thapa, he's absolutely brilliant. Watching him, Sahal, Roland Borges in the middle is something else. I mean, it's a sight for sore eyes, man. It's amazing.
This is going to be the first ISL that I genuinely follow, because I haven't really followed ISL. I've seen bits and pieces. I've seen a few games here and there, but now since I'm sort of taking more of an interest in Indian football, I'm going to follow this ISL properly. So, it's going to be exciting for me.
That's a great decision.
Yep. And so, ISL will happen, definitely. And you've also sort of, like you said, you've commentated on a Chelsea match, and you've been following Chelsea for the longest time. So, what do you think about their performance in the transfer market, and what do you think they'll be doing this season? How they'll be doing this season?
If they can replicate what they've done in the transfer market on the pitch, I don't think any Chelsea fan would be particularly upset. Possibly wearing the wrong colours as I speak about them, but it's a phenomenal sign. We spent more than 200 million on revamping.
But all brilliant signings.
Yeah, now I think it's just about Frank. See, the thing is, again, with Frank Lampard, there will be pressure on him. The first season is usually the one where he said, all right, first time in, former player, there's this emotion attached to a former player coming back and all that. And obviously no transfers available to you, right? Because of the transfer ban. And he manages to have such a great season. He could have, potentially could have even won a trophy in his very first season and came very close to it. But this is the time now. Now everyone's going to look at him and say, no excuses now. You've got Werner, you've got Ben, you've got Chilwell, you've got Ziyech, you've got Havertz, and Eduard Mendy as well. You've signed a goalkeeper, and you've got Thiago Silva. So you've got experience in defense. Now, what is the excuse? That's how the knives come out, right?
Yeah.
I still think Chelsea, despite the signings, should be targeting a top four. I don't think they are close to a Liverpool. Also because these signings will take time to gel. And Hazard carried Chelsea in many a game. Yeah, I know Kante is still there, but it's not been the same since he left, because you've not had that one guy who could turn games around single-handedly.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time for them. So for any Chelsea fan to have this ambition that, oh, we're going to win the league this time because we spent more than 200 million. We've got these fantastic players who've got a pedigree of scoring or creating or saving goals. It's not going to work like that, I think. Especially if you look at the distance or the chasm between where City and Liverpool are as a team and where Chelsea are. But I think third would be a very good finish.
I think it will be a third place finish and probably an FA Cup or a Carabao Cup for Chelsea.
Yeah, that's what they would be targeting. I don't think Frank would take it easy in the cups either. I think.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact that he'll give it the respect it deserves, I think he'll probably go for it. You're right, because a trophy would sit nicely with the season where he finishes third with Chelsea.
Definitely. I think I'm
what team do you support?
United.
All right, okay. Then I'm wearing the perfect colours for you.
Yeah. Not a good time for us.
Yeah, it's about things coming together for them as well, right? Because everything can't go through one Mr. Bruno. So it has to be
I think that showed in the first game of the season. He just couldn't do everything by himself. You could see that in the first game against Crystal Palace. Yeah. And I think it's just that we don't have good backups to sort of add to the tired legs in the team. So let's see. It's going to be an interesting next 10 days in the transfer window for us.
Even for the manager, I think it's tough. A lot of people blaming the manager for where things are with United, but is it true? I think there's a lot to be looked in behind the scenes and what's happening with the signings.
Definitely.
And how much can you blame the manager only for where things are at the moment for United?
I mean, I personally don't blame him because I think he's trying to do the best he can. Even for him, United was like, the job he got was a few levels above what he's used to even managing. So for him, this is also, learning as he goes along. So you definitely have to give him this season, probably one more season if you're pushing it, but let's see what happens. I'm actually more afraid of Liverpool now because they've signed Thiago, who's brilliant, and then they also have Diogo Jota, who's amazing.
Correct, yeah. They make very shrewd signings, and I think for them it's Klopp as well, right? He's just a fantastic manager. Even I mean, forget what he can do tactically to you, because even Guardiola can. But as a manager, I think he's just completely gone to the next level. Since he's been in charge.
Definitely, I think Klopp, Simeone, and I think the other Mourinho back during his days at Madrid and when he came back to Chelsea the first two seasons, and Sir Alex. I think the teams that these managers had and the teams the team Klopp has right now, and like you rightly said, they are good managers. All these players would sort of run through the wall for all their managers. They don't half-ass anything. They just go 100%, do everything. So
which is why I think you have to find that mix between continuity, consistency, and always pushing for trophies. And United are a big club, and there's always this desire to pick up a trophy at the end of the season. But that continuity, I think, helps. I mean, look at somebody like Sean Dyche at Burnley. He's never had the budget. He's seen some of the biggest players come and go. Or rather become big players at Burnley and then go on to do bigger, better things in life. But that consistency has helped them go back to, they've literally been everywhere. They've been in all four divisions and then come back over their history, right? So I think that's important. So that's for that very reason, I hope United stick with OGS and Chelsea stick with Lampard, because it's important to have that. Somebody is building a legacy here, a former player at that, and you completely judge him by the fact that you finished fourth in a season where you could have finished third. Fine margins, but I think consistency should be the way forward.
Definitely. So, we're nearing the end of the interview now. How your experience has been sort of just being a presenter across Europe, UK and India.
So I was not a presenter in the UK. I was mainly a commentator there. And the first time I came back to India in the first season, I did Hindi commentary for the ISL. And in the second season, I think I was told that there was somebody who like it always happens with most presenters, will tell you the story of somebody falling sick and not being available for a job, and then suddenly you get a call saying, "Can you do this?" Because the other person, the man or the woman, is not available. And that's how it happened for me. So when I look back at it again, one of those coincidences. Somebody decides to, put in a sick leave, and I get to be in front of camera. And so I went from a Hindi commentator to a reporter in ISL to a live presenter in 2016 in football, and then doing India matches, and then doing some cricket and so on. So that's how my progression has been. I look back at it obviously very very fondly, but I always tell this to a lot of people. I always say this to a lot of people who ask about the profession. That I don't want to quit my corporate job. I've got this MBA and I'm working for big four accounting firm, but I want to go and now do something in sport. I always tell them that nothing goes to waste, because even though everything that I did for the 23 years of my life, 2 masters and doing economics degrees and all of that, it might not come in handy on a day-to-day basis now, but nothing goes to waste either.
Definitely.
Because when you're standing at a packed Wankhede, or you're standing in a Salt Lake Stadium and there's a buzz of the crowd, and you suddenly tend to go blank because you're standing next to a very famous cricketer or a very famous footballer. Sometimes your mind is cluttered with thought, and sometimes you just go blank completely. Those experiences of having all the experiences that you've had along the way come in handy, is what I feel. So yeah, I look at all the first couple of degrees that I picked up in my life, which have nothing to do with what I do right now. They're coming in handy in moments like that, when I have to fill time, as they say on television, just fill to toss or fill wherever. Yeah. So make friends, talk to people, enjoy yourself.
Brilliant, man. I mean, it's been fun for me, getting to talk to you, because I only recently started following you, and best of luck for. I don't know if you'll be part of the remaining IPL campaign, but best of luck for that, and best of luck for the upcoming ISL campaign as well.
Thanks, man. Looking forward to it. It'll be a different season, but I'm really really excited about it, and I hope we have more Kush Desais going forward, who don't just dabble with Indian football, who take a genuine interest in it and help it grow, like all of us are trying to help.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
so much.
Thanks.
Best of luck, Anant.
Cheers. Same to you.